Lamont as he comes in as well. Good evening to you guys. Yes, and I'll just do a quick intro. Again, I'm not, I'm just trying to think. I can't remember where we first met, but maybe it's through Theda, my sister. I'm buying a property, or my mother's place. I can't remember. But anyways, we bought and sold a couple of places. Odeen's pulled some, let's say, rabbits out the hat type situations as well. So, God bless her with her real estate moves and her Lamont. But I want to start off by saying we'll keep it kind of really formal and so forth. But, how did you guys meet? How do you guys grow? Or you guys can just kind of take a couple of minutes amongst yourselves, how you got into real estate, where you got your passion from, et cetera, et cetera. I'll give you guys the floor and just free flow.
Okay. First, obviously I need to say hello to Kevin and Kelsey and Carl and just everybody there. But especially you two for putting this together. You guys are doing such an amazing thing for the community, and just spreading and sharing this information is so important to our community's future. So I want to applaud you and thank you for doing that. And then also for even thinking to invite Lamont and I. We're so honored to be here. And Kevin, I met when, I don't know, Amanda and I were probably like 19 years old, probably. And then, because Kevin, other half, is one of my very best friends since I was a child, the Amanda Paris. And then Kelsey, I met you because Theda and Shane, I was working with them, and then you were in the midst of like looking at properties, and I think your sister referred, and then I met your parents and Carl, and you guys have like a huge real estate family empire going on. So really proud of you guys. I'm proud to have a small part of it. But really and truly, you guys have been real estate minded maybe before I even got into real estate, because I know that you guys have been property collectors since, what was that, the early 2000s?
2005, the first place I bought in Waterloo.
Nice. Yeah, awesome. So I got into real estate when I was around 21 years old in 2007. I was in the final year of university, and I was doing some like commercial and acting and stuff like that. And I wanted just multiple streams of income. And my dad was a realtor at one point as well. And my parents are both property investors. So I was going to just help my dad out. And also I just wanted other forms of income. But in the very first year with RE/MAX, I was the rookie of the year at the RE/MAX brokers that I was with. And I've just been in love with real estate ever since, so much so that a lot of my other focuses at the time kind of fell to the wayside as I started just to put my clients first. And I became a realtor, but also a real estate investor. And in investing in properties, I met with Lamont. I met Lamont because as a realtor, he needed a home evaluation on his property, which he was building. So Lamont has been building properties for a very long time because, as I said, I think I was like 22 and he was 21, and he was building his first property with his father. And I was just so incredibly impressed by this driven young man. And at the same time, he simultaneously had a car dealership that was thriving. And so I sold a couple of my investment properties soon after meeting him. And then he sold a couple of his. And then we used that capital to start a company, which is known as Wiltshire Homes. And we also used some of that capital to buy some of the land that we're building on now. So we were buying land from the very beginning, but we started flipping homes to gain experience with the trades, renovation, and construction.
Nice. So let's go right into Lamont. Lamont, give your piece. Welcome. Give your piece as well, and introduce us and give us a little bit of your story as well.
Yeah, first of all, thanks guys for having us on. It's an honor. We love what you're doing. Odeen kind of already gave that introduction. I can't really follow behind that, but I second all of that. So basically how I started, Odeen got into a bit of the back piece. So we always knew real estate was kind of the way to go. So just jumped in at around probably 17, 18. me and my brothers bought a investment property together. Just pulled our money together. Back, that was the days when you can get away with like 5% down, and it's a lot easier, a lot easier back then. So I started there. That's what really got the bug going. And we bought it and we just rented it out and flipped it, made some money, and yeah, kept it going, and just started to look. And I was actually looking for a condo at the time for my next investment property. Just, I was 19, 18, and I wanted to live the downtown life and have the fun and all of that. Wasn't investment wise, but want to lock some money into real estate. And at the same time, my father was walking down the street and seen a house for sale, and it was a tear down. So lo and behold, it was the first day on the market. This was back when you could buy, this is a really nice spot of Toronto, 70 by 130 foot lot. I don't know if I'm aging myself, but I was able to buy for $350,000, okay? I went in full ass day one. That's what, like the whole thing, and bought that property. And that's actually the property was of my.
What year was that again? What year do you say that was roughly again?
That was, I was 18. I'm going back maybe 2000 and, oh my God, 05, I guess.
Yeah, it would have been 06 for 06. You. Mm-hmm.
So 06, so bought the tear down, and had the vision to build, right? So I didn't really know how to build, but knew enough to put it together and just kind of put together the capital. And after 2 years, I had it rented out, right? Let the property service itself. And yeah, we started building, built the house, and really built it to live in. After about like 3 years, Odeen and myself, man, and we said, you know what? Let's liquidate. Let's move all of our assets. Let's get our capital up and start just buying, building, investing, holding, the whole nine. So that's kind of like the short version of how we got there. So that's where we are now. So it kind of catapulted like the whole Wiltshire Homes company, the whole building company that's kind of broken off into the brokerage space and the development arm and all of that good stuff.
Okay, that's a nice intro, but I wanna kind of go sideways quickly, just very quickly, since we got you guys here. You know, we talked about earlier, we were talking about some books, because a lot of us are big on books and audio books. I know, Odeen, I heard you talk about in your vehicle. What recent audio books have you been into, or maybe what was your favorite book or most inspiring book? Either one of you, both of you can chime in on that as well.
So I share a lot of the stuff that I learned in the audiobooks with Lamont. Lamont listens to a little bit, but he's a little bit more on that than he is, I think. But I listen a lot to even just The Stranger's Secret by Earl Nightingale. I listen to that over and over, and I've been listening to that since I was like 16 years old. So you guys, you know that one, right, Kelsey? The Stranger's Secret. And a lot of Earl Nightingale stuff. And I listened to even The Power of the Subconscious Mind most recently. Many, really. The Power of Now. Yeah, but the most recent one is The Power of the Subconscious Mind.
I like that. I have to look into that one as well. Look into that. So again, with Lamont, again, it doesn't have to be books, but it sounds like you're hands-on. I'm just going randomly here. Like, what is one of your biggest lessons that you've learned in your real estate career? Could be building, could be flipping. What would be one of the biggest lessons that you've learned or that you've gone through or that comes to your mind as well that you share that someone may get value from as well?
You know what? One of the, I don't know if this is a lesson, but some of the stuff that I've learned to do now is hold on to your properties. Like if you go to buy and invest and you have projects or properties, there's going to be times when you feel like you might have to move them and sell them. I've learned to instead of maybe at a down market, say even now, maybe we're in a unknown market right now, instead of letting go of some of these projects or properties, hold on if you can, whether you have to rent them out or do a refinance or whatever you have to do, maybe just hold on until the market kind of goes back to a point where you can kind of, you know, capitalize on it, opposed to selling at a low point. So I've learned that, like back in the past, I was pretty hot to move properties. I would see the number, I'd be calling Odeen, oh my God, I just bought this 6 months ago, or we just bought it 6 months ago. Can you move it? There's X amount to make on it. Let's go. You know what? Next year, that thing doubled and tripled. So it's just one of those things where know what you're going to use your capital for. If you're gonna sell, know that you're going to move your money into another project that's either going to give you that same return or better or more. Like, you don't have to be so quick at that number if you just see that margin. The buy and hold strategy does work. So I do wish I held on to a couple more properties. Like the one I was talking about when I first bought, I know it's a long time ago, $350,000 I bought it for. We sold it built for like 1.5. Now that was like a record at the time. Odeen set a record on the street. That lot right now, if I were to go buy that today, it's 1.3. That's $1 million difference in my short lifetime of 10, 12 years. So the margin that I made at the time doesn't look the same as it is like today. So it's just something, you can't hold on to everything, but it's something to consider. So.
Odeen, you want to chime in anything there as well? I think there's a question after, but yeah, you want to chime in? Anything?
Sorry, Kelsey, what was the question again?
I think the question, well, I'm slipping myself here now. Like, name even like, because a lot of times we do champion ourselves. We champion ourselves for wins, but also what are some of maybe one of your greatest lessons? Could be as a realtor, could be doing business with Lamont. What are some of your greatest lessons or lessons that you could pass on to people? Because I think majority of us in here are probably on the newer side of investing. I consider myself a veteran rookie. I started in 2005, kind of let things go, bought a couple of things, but not overly aggressive as in the last 2 years. So maybe just what kind of lessons have you learned, or what could you pass on from your experience being a realtor, investor, etc.?
Yeah, as an investor, I would say one of them is know when to say when, because I think it was a great lesson to be learned a couple of years ago when I got caught up in a little bit of over leveraging, because it was just like, oh, that looks like a deal, and grabbing this and that and that, and then and then I'm always conservative in buying, but when you over leverage and then you need to liquidate, or it feels like you do, then you can get stuck. So I think always have like an exit strategy. Always like think of, okay, if this happens, what do we do? So in our case, we had planned we did this beautiful flip, and I thought that it would like last a day on the market, but it didn't. And it was taking a very long time to sell, but we decided, you know what? We're not going to sell it for too much less than its value. So what we're going to do, we're going to rent it out. So we still have that property rented till today. And it's great tenants, but it's like, you know what, at the time, Kelsey, it was rough, because it was just like, we were expecting all of that capital out. So, it was either find a tenant, or sometimes you got to know when to say when. And sometimes it's advantageous to even consider taking and weighing the pros and cons of taking a slight loss.
Mm-hmm.
I hear that. Kevin, you want to read out is there questions in there as well?
Yeah, we have a question. The first question is, what was the hardest period in real estate that you've experienced? Since 2005, we haven't had much of a downturn in Toronto versus the rest of Canada or the US in 2008 and 9. So what experience would you share about these very challenging times?
So, yeah, I would say that in 2017, when things were like just ridiculously frenetic at the beginning, and things were just selling rampantly, like I remember missing out on so many bidding wars for my clients, because there was just no way that I could justify them paying that amount for properties. And I remember some of them were getting mad at me, like, Odeen, we're missing out on these like opportunities. But I was like, guys, I'm looking at the comparables and I just don't see it. And then boom, by like May, I think, things took like this enormous dive. And a lot of people who ended up buying in that February, March, April period are still not at par with what the value is worth today. Like, what is this, 3 years later? Mm-hmm. So that being said, even though I'm particularly conservative with my clients, because it's like I care about like their our reputation and our brokerage's reputation, and I always want my clients to win on the buy, right? Because I think you make money on that buy. But that being said, I am a risk taker, and I bought something during that super high time. So that's the same property that I was just referring to that now I just have to rent out because it's just, I got caught up. But yeah, so that was the roughest time I would say. I would say, honestly, these COVID times, I wouldn't, so honestly, my experience is that things are stable, things are slower, but it's not frozen. And remember, this is a health crisis that we're in, this COVID-19 pandemic, but it's not a real estate crisis. So I hope that it doesn't get to those levels. But so far, I wouldn't necessarily even call this quite, I've seen some outliers where a couple people have had to sell for significantly less than neighbors. But again, those are outliers. Typically speaking, I think that it's taking longer to sell, but that the value is still strong.
So we have another question. Lessons learned in dealing with contractors, something that hurt at the time, but helped for future.
Wow. I could do a whole segment on this. It's a good question. So one thing with contractors is deal usually, like, because we use subcontractors for a lot of our projects. So we're bringing in like foundation guys, drywall guys, electricians, and all of that stuff, right? We found like don't go after price. Like if you are quoting out your job, that low price isn't always the best price. It could come with the quality, the time, the workmanship, and that all costs money down the road. So we've been through too many situations where at the start, when we first started of going after, okay, we just got to save. But that same money you save is that same guy that may delay you another 3, 4, 5 weeks and just kill all the money you saved. You could be incurring carrying costs and whatnot. So I definitely say just go after quality and try to get maybe a couple bids in. And your trades are probably your most important thing when you're doing any contract work. Like if you're a contractor or if you are a builder, developer, or even if you're just flipping homes or getting homes ready, your contractors are important. So just quality over kind of quantity and like a low number, definitely.
That's very good advice because it always costs. You think you're getting the discount at first,
Absolutely.
but it'll hit you after.
Yep.
Another question here. Given the current market, where are you moving your investment dollars or are you focusing on finishing up projects and thinking to pivot on investing?
Yeah, again, good question. So, like for specifically us, we have like kind of 3 arms to our business. So we have the development arm, right? That just buys land, develops and builds like small kind of subdivisions. We also have an arm that just deals with clients by itself, where we'll build for clients in large renovations. And then we have the brokerage arm. So we do have 3 entities that kind of go across the board. For right now, we haven't been hot to buy. We're looking, we're watching. If the deal's right, we'll buy. But we're not like looking to move out. We're kind of staying put, just kind of serving what's going on. So we're keeping our dollars in the GTA, if you want to kind of say like a geographical location. But we haven't really made any major moves to find that super deal or what, because we're kind of letting the dust settle before we make any rash moves. So we have projects right now that are in Durham. We're a big advocate for Durham. We have a lot of projects in Durham, Toronto too. Yeah, like Durham, you know, we go bang for buck and value, and a little easier for us for the numbers to deal in Durham. So that's a place where we feel confident in investing now. But you know, the GTA, the whole GTA is really good. You know, Odeen, I don't know if you want to add to that. You're mute.
Can you guys hear me? Sorry. As strong as the GTA market is, there are some excellent markets south of the border that I'm also an advocate of. I know that Kelsey and Kevin also invest in the States, but you really have to have strong contacts in the States by way of property managers and realtors. I invest myself quite a bit in Western New York. But my stepfather lives there, so he's my property manager. So obviously that's somebody that I can trust, which I think is it's integral, and when especially dealing with like places that, in my opinion, longer than a 3-hour drive. But yeah, so the GTA is still strong. Durham region, we're really big on, because we still believe it's undervalued. With Durham Live coming, perhaps the airport, I think that there's still extreme potential for growth. But any markets, like even as I said, in Western New York, where it's getting higher, but it's still, you can see that they're developing their infrastructure. So any pockets around, whether it be Canada or the United States, where you see that they're investing lots of dollars on transportation and infrastructure and just transit in general, it's usually a safe bet to start at least exploring.
That is good. So we have a few more questions. I think you did answer already. Where are you currently building? I know you guys have a big project. That's in
North Pickering.
North Pickering.
Yeah, we have that one, and we have one in Oshawa, and then another one coming up in Whitby.
Correct. Yeah. So three development sites that we're getting ready. It's different products. So we have like estate mansions that we're building in North Pickering.
It's a gated community.
Gated community in that Deer Creek area, and then we have some stacked towns that we're building in Whitby, Brooklyn actually, and then we have the detaches in Oshawa. So we have different product that we're building right now. So a little bit for everybody.
Okay, perfect. Another question is Homestars. Are you guys familiar with that? Is it a good place to look for contractors, or where do you go, or is it just like from experience you guys just have a list?
You know what, Homestars is definitely a good platform, because a couple of our trades I know are on there, because they've asked me to send reviews and stuff like that. And you know, people seem honest on there, but you'll never know until you work with them a couple times. Because just like restaurants, they can have like Michelin star reviews, but then you go in there and it's just like, you don't like it, right? So it's about the rapport that you build with your tradesmen, and then you'll be able to see their quality of craftsmanship, their pride in their work, and it's very important because that's reflective in your brand as well, right? As you continue to do projects.
So we have a few more minutes. We want to get into our next topic. So a few more questions we have here. The last few is areas you talked about investing in purchase. Also, do you recommend group purchases? That question, and it kind of ties into they're talking about financing rentals and builds, and how do you go about private money banks? Maybe you guys can talk about that.
Yeah, touch on the private money a little bit.
Private money, yeah. So Odeen, you can jump in at any time, but so just from this aspect of like financing your build, so you got to be careful with private money. That's one thing. So I'll always say your private money is going to be your most expensive money, but it's also the easiest money to get. Okay, so bank money is cheap money, very hard to get. You got to make sure your numbers are right. So if you're using private money, I would not suggest using private money unless you have an exit strategy. So if you go to buy a house for your personal home and you need private money to close, make sure you have an exit strategy out of that to get out, because that interest will kill you. So we do a mix, like we have investors, we have private money, we use our own capital, we mix it all up. It depends on the project. So I would suggest it. So if you go to do like a build, you definitely have to have your own capital. Do not over leverage yourself. If you over leverage yourself, it's going to eat up all your margin. We've found sometimes in the flipping market, we don't do it as much, but you know, you buy the project, you get it financed, and it could be a private, and by the time all your fees and stuff are paid, that margin might be like small. So keep in mind, like, make sure your numbers are good, make sure you have lots of room. I always say, when you buy something, make sure you're going to be okay with like a 10 to 20% like downturn, and make sure your numbers are still okay, because that can happen. And then you could also not like, you know, you might miss some costs or some expenses that you may have. So definitely private money is the avenue to use. Just make sure you have a mix of your own capital and cheap money to get through that project. Or you know, those private lenders are like sharks. They'll sink you quick.
Very good. Oh, go ahead, Odeen.
Yeah, and so again, that's contingent upon like how lucrative you want that particular project to be, because sometimes to gain experience, going the private route to gain some experience, if that's your only way in, of course you have to be aware of the risks. But if you're okay with making like a smaller margin and still making some money and then learning about the ropes of real estate, and usually when you're getting private, it's for a short term. So I'm presuming that the person is asking about perhaps like a property rehab. So if they want to get experience, maybe that's the only route that's the only option available to them. And if you run your numbers and you're okay with that bottom line, then I think that it can be prudent to leverage private money.
Definitely. And a private lender, just quickly on that, you almost have to look at them as a silent partner. That's the chunk that they're going to take out of your bottom line. Look at them as a silent partner. So private money is very important. It gets used a lot all over the city on large projects, small projects. Very important thing. Just know what you're getting into before you get into it. As Odeen said, make sure you run your numbers and you're good if you're going to go that route. But
run the numbers up and down, back and forth, just as comprehensively as possible. Mm-hmm. And then if you're okay with it and you're okay with the worst case scenario, go for it. But that's coming from a risk taker.
Well, we all have to take risks. That's how you make money, right? So we have a few more questions I'm going to try to run through really quick. One's a really good one is you seeing the changing in how people are working from home. Have you guys been thinking about that in your strategy on people maybe buying homes further away from the core of the city?
We were just saying this, Kevin. We were coming from an appointment at Royal York, and I told the client, sorry guys, we got to wrap this up. We have a Zoom conference that we got to be on time for. And then it kind of went a little longer, and I was like so annoyed. I'm like, I hate being late. And then Lamont plugged it in the GPS, and then he's like, Odeen, it says that we're only 26 minutes away. I was like, what? That's something that usually takes like an hour and 30 minutes. And I was like, you know what? This could have a positive effect on real estate because now it's more accessible. I mean, but then Lamont brought me back to reality. He's like, thankfully, when the pandemic was over and everybody's safe to go back to work, I think that he said that he thinks that maybe it will only be like a 15 to 20% of jobs that end up staying at home. Mm-hmm. So that means that the traffic will only be alleviated temporarily for one. And then when it's back to normal, maybe 15, 20%. I hope that we're able as a society to figure out how many more businesses can be worked effectively and productively from home, because I think that we're learning through this pandemic that it's beneficial in many regards.
Yeah.
Well, we're out there looking for office space right before this, right? And like where we're sitting, this is our new office. We turned our model home into our mobile office. So we actually are now kind of coming up the commercial space from rental and just kind of using some of our model homes as that mobile office, just knowing that all of our site managers, project coordinators, everybody that we deal with can work from home. So it's worked well for us.
That's dope. That's really cool. So I'm going to ask two more questions really quick. One's a very interesting question is, do you guys do any social impact developments?
That is one of our like greatest like on the go projects that are sort of like we've been working on for years. So we're working on like an affordable housing initiative, mm-hmm. and we have been for a long time. And it's like in conjunction with like the BBPA actually, which is the Black Business and Professional Association. So we can't give too many details yet, but believe me, it's something that we have been like, it's been years in the making. And I think when it is finally like we get the green light to actually go, I think it's going to be great, because essentially what it is, Kevin, it's affordable rental spaces that are luxurious. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like we want to give dignity to the rental market, because really and truly, it's like we're here talking about buying and flipping, but there's so much benefits to even just renting, mm-hmm. especially as the real estate market in the GTA becomes just, unreachable for many. But then, so we're looking at affordable housing initiatives for both purchasing and selling, but also as rentals. So we'll keep you guys posted on that.
Okay, perfect. Last question. Can people, I guess do you guys, there any opportunities for private investors in your projects? Or do they have to be accredited?
No, we have a mix. So we don't we do per project basis. So we do have we don't really call it private investment. It's almost like a JV. We'll joint venture with a group of people or small circles that have capital that they want to deploy. And we'll find the right project, or sometimes we have a project on the go that makes sense and we go. So we screen who we work with, of course, to make sure it's going to be a good working relationship. But we do offer that. It just depends on the project and the threshold and the risk tolerance, right? We usually, the risky stuff, Odeen and myself take on ourselves. It's a risk reward thing, of course. But kind of the lower risk, like the surefire stuff, we kind of offer to some of our smaller circles to get involved in. So for sure.
So I did put in the website in the chat. So if you guys want to look and get in contact with them and get more information, please just go to that site. But again, I want to thank Odeen and Lamont. You guys are doing big things. You're inspiring us. And it just to show you there's resources all around. So people are always willing to share what they know. You can always drop them a message and ask them questions, because I know they always like to see others come up behind them too and do this.
Especially us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For real.
I agree. And yeah, thanks again, guys, for definitely coming out and being part of this as well. It's greatly appreciated.
Yeah,
and I'm sure people got value of this as well. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome, and congratulations on all of your guys' success.
Yes,
Thank
yes.
you. Thank you.
Right,
Present and future, all the success that's coming.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
So as we proceed, our next thing is a little different topic. We're talking about food, growing your own food. May get a little bit into like food security and why you should be doing that, because we're talking about growing this money. Money is not worth as much as your health, because if you don't have your health, you can't enjoy the money that you're making.
Or you're gonna spend it on their health to fix it after.
Trust me, they pay extra later on. So I think we have Ucha there and Dale. Oh, boom. So Kelsey, you want to do a little intro?
All right. So I mean, I'll do an intro there. It looks like we got the power couple in this team there. The Sawyers there, representing Tynetter Farms. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. That's right.
All right. So again, thank you both for coming out this evening and sharing information. I know Ucha's always got all the information. It could be from stocks to different things, and so I'd love to hear just information about your guys' experiences. I know about how many years have you guys lived out? I'm not sure of the town. About how many years have you guys lived out there so far now?
We've been out here 8 years as of last month, April 12th. Yeah.
All right, so we'll just kind of go there, just kind of dive in. You guys can just, introduce yourselves, discuss quickly about your journey, the ups and downs, the ins and the outs, the questions from the city people that they probably ask you guys. Just jump right in and introduce yourselves.
Hold on. We got to get the angles right here.
He's like, why are you putting it up? I'm like, I don't like the way it's sitting.
Sure.
Sorry, y'all getting us here.
Of course.
I'll let you. Okay, so I mean the history of the farm. I think well, no, you don't know, but we worked in urban agriculture for a bit in the city. My husband worked with African Food Basket for a couple years, and that really got us our hands and our feet back into the soil. Personally, I grew up with a parent that constantly, I think most of us from the Caribbean, we're used to Spanish time growing on the windowsill for those apartment people, you know, growing your herbs indoors. When we moved to a house, my mom, you know, participated in many different growing competitions, growing the largest tomatoes and all these different types of things over the years. But, you know, with D, with his family, you know, coming from a farming family on both sides. So in Jamaica, you know, if those of you who have Jamaican, um, you know, experience in Jamaica or family, a legacy there. The farming is very interesting. You know, the town that his family comes from, north of Brownstown. So my family, my dad on my dad's side is Jamaican, my mom's Trinidadian, and he's Bayesian mother, Jamaican father. So interesting mix. I think between all of them, we all have growing somewhere in the mix. And we got the experience, we got an opportunity to spend about 6 weeks in Jamaica about 12 years ago?
Yeah.
Oh wait, this is 14, 15 years ago, 16 years ago. And for us, it was just like a light bulb went on, you know, being in this farming community, seeing all of the opportunities for growth, and then just the opportunity that was just there. Again, that town, in this particular town, for about, I want to say maybe 2,000 hectare-acres, everybody just grows yam, you know? So we were looking at like, how can you know, we were in the process of building our skills in food development, and how do you diversify, and how do we build our skills over here? So it actually started that way. How can we build our skills over here so that we could better help the farming community in Jamaica, where our family's from? So long story short, we came up upon an opportunity to actually purchase a house in Markham at a really good rate. So at that time, it would have been 2012. Mm-hmm. And we got an offer from a relative that was moving to Durham to purchase their house for $400,000, which, you know. And we decided at the time, you know, to be honest, very organically, like we were renting, pretty comfortable in our, you know, day-to-day lives. We always had our goal to get to the farm. We had already started just on the weekends, like this is where our long-term vision was. So we decided, you know what, let's start visiting farms. We just started to drive on a Sunday. We would go to my in-laws in Markham every Sunday for dinner. And we would kind of dip and take a drive for about an hour north or an hour east north, and just started looking at the price of properties. I started calling. That's when I realized, I mean, even at that time, you know, they say, what is it, the hindsight? Mm-hmm. We called, you know, I remember looking at a property and it had a pretty dismal house and thinking, oh, we could probably scoop this up for, you know, maybe $300,000-$400,000. And then we called the realtor and she said it was 1.3. And we were dying at 1.3 now, but in that particular area, this was Highway 7. And if for those of you who know the area, and Reeser, I believe, mm-hmm. You know, you can't even get a property of that size. It was 100 acres. So right now, that's a multi-million-dollar area.
What year was that?
Just to show,
what year was that?
Just want to 2000 and I want to say maybe 10, 11. Mm-hmm. Yeah, 2010 and 11. Because we Pardon?
How much did you say they wanted for it again?
They wanted 1.3 for about 103 acres.
Wow.
Yeah. And we were dying at the time because we're like, you know, oh my gosh, how can we, how could we, you know, it was just way outside our bucket. The bank had approved us for a certain amount. There was like double what we were approved for at the time. So it wasn't even in our bucket, but you know, looking back, you know, if we had, you know, who knows? But, you know, the reality is that area now has more than gone up maybe 300-400%. So anyhow, we started looking. So we started to look, you know, we decided that we looked at what's important for us as far as being connected to the city of Toronto or the GTA. And what was paramount for us was having access to our family that we're very dependent on to help with our children. Our children still go to school in Markham, regardless of us living up here. So we knew that this would be the, you know, a necessity. And we planned all of our routes to be within an hour and a half of McCowan and Denison. That was really it. So we had that radius. And we were going anywhere, because those of you who are around at our wedding, we got married in 2008 in Alliston, Ontario. And at the time, we were actually considering moving it that way, right? Like we thought, you know, this would be great. The little farm property that we were on, we even had a slight opportunity to purchase that property. So we're like, you know, it had to be within this route. Then we started to factor, at the time we were self-employed, so it was a little bit different, but we started to factor in once we became, started working back in the private sector, the distance to our work and all of these different things. Anyhow, long story short, I'm trying my best as much as possible. We had multiple offers. I remember the first house that we looked at a property in a town called Cavan, Ontario, which is like just north of, I want to say Bowmanville. So you take the 115 below Peterborough. It was 150 acres for $380,000. Huge, beautiful century house that had been gutted and restored, and wonderful outbuildings. It met like we had a criteria around land design. We really wanted to have access to water and all of these different things. And I remember we put in an offer, it was accepted. Something happened funky with the funding or the finance piece. We didn't end up getting it. And we were in tears. Like I personally cried, like, you know, I was like, oh my gosh. And I realized the importance of not being emotionally connected to these properties. So we ended up looking, continuing our search. We came to look at actually another property in this area, and the realtor suggested, seeing that we had come so far, why don't we look at here in Kirkfield? And the minute we walked in, we realized it's for us. Like looking at I think you really have to look at your capacity. Everybody has the mindset. I mean, we looked at a house in Hamilton Township that was a sprawling, 182 acres, sprawling century home. Like I really love the old century homes, but sprawling space, but the ceiling was caving in some parts. And we were like, yeah, we could fix that. But working full time, we have 5 children. At the time, I think it was just Khalid, Josiah, and Adisa. And I think Kia might have been in the belly. So the reality of fixing that up and getting that done was just not doable. And when we came here, we realized, you know what's for you when you get into it. And immediately we said, this was it.
Did you have like a minimum amount of acreage you guys were looking at, or just something rural? Like what were some of the small kind of items that you said, you know what, I need to get, or we really want to get in a property that we're getting when looking for something, a rural property? Is that me, or?
I don't know. Maybe they dropped.
They're in rural areas, so I don't know.
I know.
Just when it was starting to get nice.
I know.
Conversation's getting nice.
So they
need the 5G tower.
Yeah. Oh, I think they got to connect. So, but where they're about an hour north of Whitby, and they're on like over 70 acres of land.
Yeah, it'd be nice if you have the map as we wait for them to come up, Puff. Like maybe can you pull up
let me go pull
as
it
well?
up, see if I can share it.
Those are up around the Beaverton area or something like that, if I remember right.
Let me show.
We have a few farm people in the group that deal with the farming and the natural health as well.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, let me see where they are.
I think they're east of Beaverton or something like that, if I remember right.
They're right up here. Like, oh shoot, I'm zooming way too fast. So where's Whitby? They go up here, Kirkfield right here.
Right.
So they live somewhere up here.
Yeah, near the Trenton Lock I'm just remember some of the key things leaving there.
Yeah, but they have a lovely lot. But just going out there and being on a property where as far as you could see is your piece of land is something nice. Yeah, I think the lock is somewhere here. They're somewhere in this area right here.
That's right. Oh no, where's they at? But as you guys can see, back? Okay, we'll wait for them to come back. But as you can see, that it's interesting the amount of when you start to think about the numbers quickly. Markham, what did they say? 1.3 million for 100 acres, and that was how many years ago? I can't remember. Did she say? Is it 12 or 8 years ago? She said.
About 2010 or 12, she said, or something like that.
Wow, 100 acres in Markham. That's probably worth like.
Unreal now.
Huh?
Oh, they. Hi, sorry about that. It's another reality of country life. We can't get.
We were just joking with that too, you know, and saying
high-speed internet is. Yeah, it's funny because we've had to do all these Zoom meetings from home. You know, Shabaka works for is a teacher, and
yes.
I'm working in the nonprofit sector. So constantly, and every time we have to speak, it drops. We could be on the call for like 2 hours and nothing, and the minute that it's our turn to share any kind of information. Anyhow, yeah. So I mean, the long and short of it is that you have to kind of
okay. So you gotta know what you want. Have an idea of what you want, and then actually physically get out there and start looking. I think anyone looking at property, it's not just buying land, but understanding what you want to do with that land and what your long-term goals and visions are. If you're going to grow, then you got to make sure you're buying land that's close to water, irrigation, all of these different pieces. If you're just looking for land for hobby purposes, then it's not that intense. You got to look at your ability to what to manage, what you're able to manage. We were actually blessed to get this property from a family that had, done a great amount of work on the house. The property itself is a lot to maintain, and the previous owner, they got to an age and a physical ability where they weren't able to maintain the property the way that it should be maintained.
Speak on that a little bit. Speak about like, I've been to your guys' property. It's enormous, really. But speak on like the a couple of things quickly. You mentioned the water. Because I'm not sure if you guys are well or the different water systems, because those are obviously important things in living in rural living. And maintenance yard, because everyone says, yeah, I'd like to have a big yard, I like to have a big property, but when you know about all like the big weeds, the big animals, the etc. So touch on some of the infrastructure part when it comes to well maintenance deal. I know you're probably doing a lot of the work with the children and so forth, but yeah, touch on some of those things.
Yeah, so we're on 85 acres here. We're blessed with the fact that we have a little bit of everything. So when you're looking for property, you want to make sure that you have access to water. So we're surrounded by water out here. So on the east and west sides, we have conservation land, swamp land, and then we also have a stream on the west side of the property. And on the south side, we back onto Lake Mitchell Lake, yeah, Mitchell Lake. So water for us isn't a problem. That's one thing. If you're looking for rural property, you want to make sure you have access to water.
Yeah.
We also have about 35 acres that are treed. So you want to make sure you also have some form of lumber on your property. So we have that. So with regards to, is that us or?
Oh, he's
That's Kevin.
Yeah, it's Kevin. That's so.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Yeah. So Kevin's been here quite a amount of time, so he can point out which part is which in that map.
Yeah. So with regards to maintaining the property, you're not maintaining 85 acres. What we're doing is we cut probably around 1.5 acres around the house, so a riding more, and then we farm about 3/4 of an acre. And then we use the livestock. So we have sheep, we have goats, we have chickens. We have livestock guardian dogs that live with the animals, because that's a reality too. Big property means big animals. So we have dogs that keep away bears, keep away coyotes, raccoons,
and
fox.
It was a growing process. Let's be real.
Yeah.
We came from being afraid of dogs in the city, right? I remember the first time when we saw a raccoon on the road, I was like, yo, we really see these at not raccoon, the porcupine. I was like, we see these at the zoo, There was such a learning curve, I remember we're not advocates. Most Caribbean people, we don't like dogs in the house. So initially, we got up here. We realized we needed a dog, and we had to learn. We got a collie because we looked at, of course, Dale very much did all his research and wanted the most brilliant of all the dogs. But then we didn't think about the dog would have to live inside during the winter. Right? Yeah. Who's going to walk the dog, given our lifestyle and all these different things? So it definitely was a process. And we kind of build year by year based on our experiences and interactions with the land itself. Like when we first moved here, we threw up beehives and then bears smashed them up. Like it's a reality, and I mean, shred them to look like yeah, it was so we realized, okay, we need to have dogs. And we got the first one, Muntaka, and then that didn't really work out. And we ended up now with a breed of dog that we've been breeding and actually is another form of revenue for us. We have Mazungu, who's around the house. He's the male, and he protects the house. These are Italian sheepdogs that they live in the mountains in Italy. They love the cold. They hate the heat, right? So, and they're nocturnal. They sleep during the day. They're up guarding your property during the night. And then we have 2 females that live in the barn with the animals. So basically your livestock is your money, right? Every time you lose a sheep, a chicken, a goat, that's money that you lose. You're getting, $300 to $600 per animal, depending on the weight and what you're using it for. Who's the
common predator? Who's the most common predator to come in?
Coyotes. Yeah, coyotes.
I was gonna say man.
Huh?
I was gonna say man.
No, coyotes out here.
The man them are scared of the dogs.
Yeah, yeah. So that's another thing. It's a whole different life out here. Like we don't, we security, our dogs. Like the other day, we bought some furniture from Lazy Boy. It got broken. The guy came up here to fix it. And I don't know what took him, but he decided to open the gate, even though the dog was there, and he bit him. And while he was talking about he's gonna sue us or whatever, I'm like, you came onto our property and you weren't invited. It's a guard dog. You know what I mean? So it's a whole new lifestyle, even the mindset out here, right? There's a whole different country mindset and how people operate. Mm-hmm. But as far as the animals and stuff like that, I think, every year we kind of built on based on, I remember the first time we even got an animal in the barn, it was 1 goat, and we kind of just kept checking on it every day to see if it was alive because we never raised goats before, And I think last year, at one point, there was a time we had almost
close to 40 goats.
Close to 40 goats, so we're vegan. We don't eat them, but we do send them to processing in the fall when we cull them down. The purpose of the goats for us is mainly to fertilize the land where we're going to grow in future years. We're trying our best to be in harmony with the land as much as possible and not have too much mechanical intrusion. So we look at strategic ways of having livestock that are keeping the grasses low. And also, we don't want too many trees to grow on the acreage that we don't cut. So goats and sheep are very good for doing that. And, we learned over the years that, different ways of stewarding those animals and stewarding the crop and different things that we're attempting to produce given.
Given our time.
Touch on the crop. Touch on the crops. Like, is there a crop that you guys are majoring in? Is there crops that's easiest to grow? Is there crops that's most profitable with regards to your farming? I'm not sure direction you guys are going in general.
Yeah, it's kind of it's a loaded question. We do a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
So we do from callaloo, we do potatoes, we do sweet potatoes, we do cucumbers.
We grew sorrel here.
Sorrel,
we had like the flowers there.
Moringa, tiger nuts. So we have sandy soil out here. So the root crops.
Wait, hold on. You grow tiger nuts up there?
Yeah.
They grow in this environment. Yeah.
You're holding back. You're holding back.
Goji berries, there's so many different things. And that's the thing too. I think we've been kind of blessed to have opportunities. My job previously to the one I was working in now was in food security. So I personally had an opportunity to travel the world and learn around, different growing methods and what works well in different zones, and just learning sustainable agriculture. Shabaka as well. Like before I was even going, he was traveling all over and, really connecting with farmers on all different levels, from the urban to the rural, and learning what makes sense. It's very important to us that we're growing foods that are culturally aligned with, you know, what we're accustomed to. We've brought seeds from all over, Barbados, Trinidad, Jamaica, tested them out to see, you know, I think we had corn, we had a Jamaican corn, we had a pumpkin, you know, like just testing them out to see how well they do in our environment and what's realistic as far as taking to market. I know for sure things like the greens do well. Like there was a time we were doing some restaurants,
kale does really well out here. Potatoes, everything really does well because you develop your soil over time, right? So no matter where you're growing, as long as you it's not really growing the plants, you're growing the soil. So if you can get amendments in, and we're moving towards like a no-till system, which is, it's a lot of work up front, but hopefully at the back end, we'll see the payoff. So we're experimenting still right now with like growing enough food to say for this year, we're putting down enough for close to 20 families. So if we were to supply food for 20 families, what would that look like? So we're working with numbers and formulas and calculating seed amounts, and we've standardized our system now where it's 100-foot beds that are 30 inches. So on our about 3/4 acre, we have those beds set up. So hopefully next year now, we don't have to go in and make beds again. We have our beds set up. We're working with a tarp system so that we don't have to plow anymore, because we have all those implements, but we realize that, you know, tilling and plowing every year is not the best thing for our soil. So these are things that we're working with. So we have a variety of, and every year we're always adding new things and experimenting with different crops to see what works. And we've been successful with a lot of things that we're putting down.
I want you guys to boast on what's your most successful crop, or what's your favorite thing that you've grown, or just boast something. Just boast.
Boast? Well, you know.
We don't brag on boast.
We don't brag on boast much. We are gonna brag on boast. I can't lie. The honey. The honey is on a different level. The honey's on a
I knew it. See?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the honey, like it's like the bees kind of take care of themselves, and basically on one hive through a system, you can get close to 100 pounds of honey just on one hive. So like,
how long does it take to get that hive, or the correct term? Like how long does it take to?
Oh, now's the time to buy like what they call like a nuke. So if you buy like a starter hive, by the end of fall, you can get around 50 to 75 pounds.
Yeah.
Wow.
So not to mention the wax. Like people, you know, the wax is a big business, right? Like we have a relative who's into doing the candling, air candling, and all these different types of things. You know, just candles in itself, like that's a major, you know, when we look at sustainability, these are things that you should actually be making and putting up for worst case scenarios, right? But you end up with a couple pounds of, wax. I would say like 30, 40 pounds of wax that comes from that hive as well, that can be used for multiple things. I mean, if you go into Big Carrot or Whole Foods and try and buy beeswax candle, you're looking at about $30 to $40 a candle. And you know, they talk about the health benefits of cleaning the air and all of these different things. So there's so many different ways. Like one of the things we're looking at doing is how we can retrofit the property so that we can have a market on site attached, you know, so it's kind of like a drive-through. People can come up on the weekend. We do our flowers, we do our honey, we do, you know, just those little things just that we can control and run at our own pace. But there are so many different mutual benefits. Like one of the big things in our flowers, we look at medicinal flowers. So looking at homeopathy and what are the, you know, pulsatilla, calendula, what are the different flowers that we should be getting into the ground that also have medicinal benefits for.
I agree too.
Yeah, somebody just got their license to grow. So looking at, and I'm telling you, you know, the
congrats.
You know, the quality is so much better. Like sure, Shabaka could send some pictures. The trees that he put in the ground last year, they were like miniature trees. Like the trunks were wide. Like when we started doing our own research, finding growers in California that were growing ganja trees big like these like pine trees, huge, you know. And so we saw, you know, the infinite potential in sourcing, growing, and actually getting it into the soil itself. Soil wellness, black gold, all of those great things. So
you guys are speaking a lot about soil, which is great. Puff, do you want some questions to the side?
Yeah, we had so one was like amazing, love what you both are doing. The other one is a question: how clean is the growing as far as pesticides and how the animals are fed for meat?
The animals are free range. So during the spring and summer, they have about 80 acres that they get to roam and eat. And during the winter time, we feed them hay. We don't use any pesticides, and everything that we source, any implements that we source, we try and either find the most reputable producer or an organic producer. So yeah, the whole point is to get away from those type of implements, right? Because we know that they're not sustainable. And if we do use something to manage pests, we'll use things that are organic, neem, diatomaceous earth, and things like that.
I also even going back to the purchasing of the property, that was definitely one of the things that we looked at. We didn't want to be anywhere near any corn farms or any of these industrial farms that are using Monsanto seeds, because what happens is they cross-pollinate onto your crop. So one of the big green flags for us up here, yes, it was a bit further, but it's the only farm on this street. So everybody else has maybe an acre around their house and maybe some wetlands behind them, or they have managed forests. But for this road in particular, there are no other operational farms, and we're not flanked on any side by any industrial farms, which was a major piece for us.
And then you have another question, but the farm hadn't been farmed in close to 20 years.
Yeah.
And then
30.
also when you're looking for a property, and Ucha can expand on this, we were blessed to get this one because of property tax. So there's so you can go.
So that's another thing too. Like you could pay when you have. So let's say you purchase for an investment, a large portion. Like I have a friend, he has a property in Barrie. It's 22 acres, and he just leases it out to a farmer. For I think the farmer pays him $10,000 a year. He grows whatever crops that's there, but he pays no taxes, because for farming, like this property is open to 3 different type of tax subsidies. So we have a wetland subsidy, you can get a farm subsidy, and there's one more.
Tree management.
So that's basically your commitment that you're not going to cut down a mass portion of the trees on the property. You're going to maintain the wetlands, so not go in and or the conservation areas. You're not going to go in and develop any of those areas, because technically the property
credit. You get tax credits for.
You got 25% off for each one.
So each one. So when you get 25 here, 25 there, I think the farm one is a bit more. You end up paying nothing, in tax, close to that. Once you have again, you have to have your stuff in order, right? You got to do your taxes every year, because they're going to check. It's all based on what you claim on your taxes every year. That's why you'll find people who invest in open property, or just I forget the term, but just open land. They'll always put a farmer or somebody on it, so that they can get a farm registration number and pay nothing for the property. Pay tax-wise, they don't pay anything. We're on a well, so we're well and septic, and we give thanks for that. Another big thing, we're looking for a property that would not be in an area that would develop anytime in the near future, because we do not want municipal water. We can get into all of that, in another conversation. But your well is pretty much controlled. The area that we're in, because we're flanked on by water on 3 sides. There's also a natural sieve that's happening with the water that comes into our well. And then we have
Sorry to cut you. What's a natural sieve? Just
a filter.
Like a filter, because because the wetlands act as a natural filter. You have all of these natural minerals and earth that's the water's filtering through before it gets to your well, like where you've drilled. And then for us, we've actually put in there's a high iron in this area, so we have an iron filter, we have UV light, and a natural water filtration for the entire house.
I have 2 more questions in here. One is, are you guys organic certified or plan to be?
No, that's a gimmick, man.
We're natural. We're natural. Because when we looked into the organic certification,
it's a money thing.
It's a money thing, right? So, like, I mean,
non-GMO. By law, you can put non-GMO on anything.
Our ancestors did organic before there was a term organic, and we're natural. So we're natural growers, and everything that we try and do is under that umbrella of organic. But we're going beyond organic because organic has its limitations too.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. So
I think people should look into what organic, especially by the federal government standard of organic. You buy grapes, strawberries, all these things, they're not organic. They can actually put up to 16% pesticide in all of those foods, right? So non-GMO, there's a huge lobby. Like part of my work previously was working in policy around food at the federal level. And there's a big push to get non-GMO now to be kind of like the licensed branding, like organics, because a lot of food companies realize the organic certification, especially in North America, not just in Canada, it's a gimmick, right? Like you can buy, a lot of companies just buy into the certification, and then they're actually putting a lot more inputs into that food that you're eating than you would expect. So for us, we consider ourselves beyond organic.
Yeah. So if you're buying from farmers too, it's good to visit the farm. And get to know your farmers, like your local farmers, and see what they're doing. Because you can go to a farm and see and know if they might say organic, and then when you go there, you see something completely different. So
that was my next question. When are you guys organizing the trip? I'm about ready right now.
Well, it's funny because our house has been the COVID. Guys, we're like, I don't know how we not catch COVID yet. Our house is just full of every weekend. Somebody's here every day. Somebody's here. I come home from work and it's always,
So people are coming out, and really we want families to come out, especially the young generation. So our daughters and our son actually are controlling the chicken operation now. So they're close to about 60 laying hens right now. So they feed them, they monitor them, they sell the eggs. So they sell brown eggs, a dozen for $7. They collect the funds, they're learning how to budget. So it's good when we can get the youngsters from our community particularly to come out and see people that look like them, working the land and what an operation looks like, because it's a life skill that we all need. And I'm sure now with the times that we're going through, people are starting to see that, look, oh man, I need to grow some food, because we saw that out here, where everything sold off when COVID came off. We couldn't get, our regular seed distributors, we couldn't get seeds because everybody bought off the seeds. We couldn't get our regular order of chickens because everybody in the city bought off all, so people, when COVID hit, everyone kind of, the switch flipped and people woke up to that reality. But we can set up a time where we can get a group
field trip.
And we can do a
field trip.
Yeah.
You get a bus from work.
We're a little over because this is supposed to be the open session. But one last question. Do you sell any of your products, plant, soil? I think you guys touched on that. Can anybody around here get some of your products?
Let's call Kevin. Call Kevin.
I guess you have a link me. Love to visit.
Bernadette, Kevin's mom is like our outsource for everything. We've been passing stuff through her house for
Yes. All right. So I guess
we do, especially when things get going in the field, we'll have plenty to sell.
Yeah.
Eggs are running already, and then honey will be here in probably another month. Goat meat, lamb, and all that's, you got to order 3 to 4 weeks in advance. And then, we sell the whole goat. So you can't buy like a leg or, a 2 pound. You have to buy the whole goat.
Okay, but let's touch on that quick, because some of us have no idea what roughly how much would can you vet for like a whole goat?
Well, there's different costs. So we go to a local auction every week. where they have animals, and we purchase them. And then, we have them for a certain amount of time. A lot of the animals and a lot of things that people buy in the city, you'd be, that's another story, but it's just like, you got to know where your meat comes from, like we can do another session on that. But if, we're vegan, but for our family, family's not going to listen, and people have their own ways, but we always just advocate that if you are going to eat meat, make sure you know where your meat's coming from, because if you ever come to somebody's auction and you see some of these animals that are being sold, it's the butchers that are buying these sick animals, and then they're sending them down, they're processing down and sending them down to the city. So you got to know where your meat comes from. So when we have a goat, let's say you order a goat and it's 200 pounds. We bring it to a local butcher because we can't do it on the land. You have to bring it to, a licensed butcher who butchers it, and there's a cost there which we pass on to the customer, and then we're charging $7.99 a pound for that goat. So whatever that final cost is, or weight, whatever that weight, and everything is taken off. So even the skin, we have a brother down in the city that most of you probably know, Japal. So we actually give him the skins, and he makes drums out of the goat skins. So after that, you're looking, again, if it finishes at 100 pounds of meat, you're paying $7.99 a pound for that, plus delivery and processing.
Unless you come in and put some sweat equity, then it's $5.99 a pound.
No.
No, but that even in it was a process, right? Like we learned so much that we work with a great butcher that cuts it up any way that you want. There's actually a Caribbean cut, like a preferred cut for Caribbean communities. There's South Asian cut. There, some people just want it in half. They wanted it in quarters. So we're able to facilitate that for anyone who's interested in that area.
As you say that quickly, just because we're freestyling a little bit here, but I always say, like, again, I myself, I'm a no-face eater, a vegan, whatever you want to say. I don't eat meat either. But Carl, I said this to some of my family members. I would like us for even to go to a butcher. It means once a month or once a year to actually go and butcher or see how it's butchered, because sometimes those of us who eat meat, we don't really realize the process. And I'm not telling anyone what to eat or how to eat or whatever they want, but I think it's to see how things actually happen, just like you guys mentioned, from the animals that are being given and so forth, just to have a better idea of like the complete industry and of what we're consuming as well, right? If we're getting eggs, it'd be nice if people get, I know even here, there used to be a guy at the side of the road who sold eggs from his little farm and so forth. So yeah, I think that all that is very interesting as well, and something
from the field to the table, it's an interesting process, so even if we made a day out of it, you go to the auction, you get there early and see the animals before they go up for sale, and you can kind of peg which ones are healthy, which ones are not, and then you can watch afterwards and see who buys the unhealthy meat.
That's right.
Which is usually the butchers, right? So, and then they're sending it straight to to get processed, and then that's being sent down to the city. So once you see that whole cycle, you're like, okay, you know what? You have family, you have friends. You're like, listen, if you're gonna keep eating meat, just please make sure you know where it comes from, because a farmer or whoever, they're trying to make ends meet. So if I can catch a sick goat for half the price and chop it up and mix it with some good meat, hey.
And that's exactly what's happening. That's exactly what's happening. Like, they're coloring the meat and everything. So you got to be very, very mindful.
And even when you think you're buying ram goat, you're not buying ram goat a lot of the time. Which I don't know what the real difference is outside the smell and the texture, but they're mixing it, they're spraying chemicals, so it gives it that ram goat smell. So you have to know where your food is coming from, because the food's behind the curtain isn't always pretty, so
I think one thing, I know, Kevin, you want to get to the next section, but I think something to touch on before, that we've experienced and observed is the importance of building community. So when we moved out here, we were less than 0.1% of the community when you look at the racialized demographics, right? When we started going to the auctions, we recognized you could eat easily. There was like one brother he lived at Oakwood and St. Clair, but he owned a farm at where is it? Totten and Totten and the 115, which he bought. Long story, he bought in the 80s and was holding on to. He grows goats there and whatnot. Over the last 8 years, South Asian community has increased by 400% in this area. Like I remember when we went to the day we moved here, we had to go to we went to Subway to pick up for a brother that was here, and he wanted to get something to eat, and I went to Subway, and there was a South Asian brother in there, and he was like, "Yo, he said he moved to Halliburton, and he bought this Subway down here." And he was asking us, where's your children going to go to school? Because, if you're going to send your children to school here, then we'll move down here so that, we can have more of us, so look at that, more of us here, in the last 8 years, they have taken advantage and really, flown with just what's been happening around acquiring land. Like, we have like a person, somebody from Malvern, that would have been right in our community where we live, move on by 100 acres. And first it was his vacation home. Now they moved up here, So the community has really aggregated together, and now they run the livestock market. When you go in there, the South Asian guys are in the pens, moving the animals and all of this different thing. I was driving at Markham and Ellesmere late last year, and somebody's honking me. But when I look over, it's one of the brethren from the livestock market. And, they're doing the same thing we're doing. They're working in Scarborough, but they're living up north. They're I would say, if you look at the statistics when they come out eventually, you'll see a huge, huge boom in the South Asian market moving out here. Shabaka has some students that as a collective, their community bought a property up here just to have green space for their community. And so they just come up on the weekend. They're teaching self-reliance. He was saying that the old women were learning how to shoot, because that's a whole other piece is your security. When you look at COVID, guns and ammunition were just gone, as soon as COVID hit, so I think it's important to put that out there. I think we tend to have these discussions. People come out here and they're, it's so great or whatever. But at the end of the day, you really have to invest. There's another family that's moved out here. I don't know if they're on the call, but they're part of the group. And we've been working with them a lot. Yvonne was supposed to buy the house across the street, she and Danny. And now I think they're looking again or whatever. Because at the time, the house across from us is 103 acres. And that sold for $236,000, like in 2000.
Give me a
2012.
Give me a second there before we do the wrap up. But so again, pricing out there, nearby stuff. Have you guys looked at other stuff?
Oh yeah.
Have you guys thought of other stuff? What kind of general pricing? Just stuff quickly before we wrap up here that you guys have seen as well.
So the pricing has, I'll be honest, has gone up tremendously since we moved here, right? Like you're seeing houses with like 5-10 acres going in the 600,000-700,000, and the houses are dilapidated or they need a lot of work. If you have somebody who's on it, you might be able to sweep up something, because you do get a lot of people who estate sales out here. The children inherit the property, they just want the money quick, and you might get it below the cost. Because they still don't see the value. They may not recognize they're in the city. They just need the money as quickly as possible. But we're seeing, I would say the average, the other day there was a family up here and they're looking to buy, and I think their budget was like in the mid 500s, and they still would have had to go about an hour north to find anything close to what we have here. Just as like we bought another, like a rental property in the town, Beaverton, about 3 or 4 years ago, and that was under 200,000. At that time, you could pick up a couple houses, under 200,000. Now everything's selling for 500 easily. So, and and it's not to scare anyone away, because I would suggest, if you have it to invest, if you can get into this market now, because it's only going up. They're building subdivisions everywhere. On the other side of the lake, there's a whole development of executive cottages. Basically, the family lives up here and one person goes up and down to the city type of thing. So that's obviously increasing the property value at a rapid rate. I think with the diversity of people who are coming into community, we have a lot of white flight, so out here. So a lot of folks who are just selling to go further north. because they want to keep that, you know, traditional Canadian rural feel. But yeah, like the properties definitely have there's a property at the end of our street that's a 70 acre, what is it? It's a where you go drive your mini cars and you ATVs and that. So it's just an open land, you know, open space with some roadways and bumper. And they wanted $2.3 million just for that. And it's like maybe a 1970s 1,800 square foot bungalow, like something you'd buy in Oshawa, the house, and then the property is not even diversified enough. You'd have to do a lot of work to pull out what they put in these cemented areas. So yeah, I saw the for sale signs gone, so I'm assuming they sold it. But yeah, it's changing a lot. Again, it's still cheaper, you know, like I'd rather buy still 5 acres and a house in a rural area for $700,000-800,000 than to buy in Parkdale, you know what I mean, or to buy in Coxwell and Girard, because Parkdale we all know is multi-millions, no. But you know, it's still worth the investment, but there has been a huge jump in the last couple of years.
Okay, I think we only have like well, we had a few more questions. This is really an open period. If anybody has questions or wants to discuss anything, or even wants to talk about any wins they had over the last month. But you did, I'm just going over, you did say you do sell fresh produce. If you're interested, I guess you could reach out to myself. And do you guys have a website?
No, not yet. No. We've been working on it. We have to understand, people, we work full time. Yeah. We call ourselves hobby farmers for a reason, because we work full time. We have 2 sons at university. We got 3, bottom 3 that are 5 all the way to 14. So,
but with the time off, we're getting that stuff in
definitely,
mind, because the girls are really, that's their thing.
Yeah, they're passionate about it.
So they're taking the pictures and they're organizing and putting those things together. So it'll come, but until that time, you can communicate through this group or through Kevin, and then you know our name and numbers are there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
Thank you. Appreciate all the information. It's great.
Yes, definitely appreciate sharing all that information. And we probably can go on like 4 hours. You have to have you guys on just for like a whole session about that, because I think there's a lot there.
Yeah, we'll wait for the road trip.
Right.
The road trip north.
Yeah, tell Bernadette she has to cook for it. That's it.
Yeah, man. So I don't see any other questions. I know we have 5 minutes more. Does anybody else have any questions? Or I did send out a sorry, go ahead.
You say something like backyard type, just go around selling the type of thing, grow and just sell it on like official website.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, watch
Can you repeat that?
$60,000 to $100,000 off of this growing stuff, and they do it full time at their house.
Wow.
So yeah, that's actually motivated us, I think, in the first place.
Wait, hold on.
He said like 1 acre garden, like the, you know,
when
you do
the numbers. Yeah, you can make there's a guy in Quebec, and we're kind of following his model, and he's made over $100,000 on 1 acre. So that's the blueprint we're working with. But again, that him and his wife are doing that full time.
Yeah.
We both have jobs full time, so we're setting that up. But there's a lot that goes into something like that, and we're working towards that model because you know, we want to be, you know, we want to be self-reliant and own our own thing and do our own thing in the near future, right? So we're working towards that. So yeah, there is a lot of people like you know, from an acre you can make double that, you know, if you have the right things set up and you have your market, you have your restaurants, you know, you have your CSAs.
You sell it before you put it in the ground. Like that's the best way to do. Like if you're really looking to make money off of any type of food growing or any type of food business, you have to have your market before you even put it in the ground. So you know that whatever you're putting in the ground, as you reap it, it's going to go somewhere. For us, because we have the luxury of being able to experiment. A lot of times too, you go on YouTube, a lot of these people you see, they're in California, they're in Colorado. They don't have laws like we, in our province of Ontario, you can't grow food in your backyard and sell it. It's against the law. You know, like only farms, you can give away produce from your backyard, but you cannot sell it. The minute that you sell it, you put yourself at risk, you know, at unnecessary risk. So, you know, you have to look at, you know, where you are and kind of play within the, you know, the bylaws and all of these things that exist. We're in the place that you're in. Yeah.
That's news.
But for sure.
I said that's news because there's a lot of callaloo and Scotch bonnet pepper that sells summertime around the city, and I know that's from backyard. So
no, you have to do what you have to do. What you have to do. You have to do. And
it's just your risk, right? Like, what is your risk? Because the minute someone gets sick, all of a sudden, you know, the callaloo man becomes their money. You know, like they're gonna go and say, "I bought this from this person," and guess who's liable? Even though the person bought it from you, the person who grew it and sold it is the one who's taking the risk. So it really, you have to look at, you know, all of those pieces, and with anything, you have to determine what your personal risk is at that time, right? So
go down by Kensington, you see those the green onion from all them backyards, and then
people do it. You know, and like the numbers, like you said, you see the numbers on YouTube, and they're achievable, right? It's just you have that time to invest.
That's right.
Where we're not at that point. COVID has been a blessing for us because we're here full time, so we've been able to get, you know, we actually have two greenhouses up. 100. They're both 100 feet by 25 feet. So that gives us season extension. So we're able to grow earlier in the year and grow later into the year. So
you'd be surprised, kale will grow all the way into December, sometimes into January, if it has the right conditions, right? So, you know, and you get to experiment. I would suggest everybody, when you have a little yard, if you have a balcony, you know, we grew up with tires. I grew up in Gilder, and we had tires on the balcony. My grandmother would fill with soil and grow her tomatoes and her thyme. Wherever you are, that's one thing with growing. There's always an opportunity for you to get yourself into soil and experiment with different growing opportunities. I would suggest that if you have a backyard, you don't have to do the fancy raised bed, all those different types of soil. Just grows, food grows well just there in the soil. You know, raised beds are great because, you know, it keeps out predators. It's easier on your back, all these different types of things. But you know, sometimes people get overwhelmed with looking at all these different models that you see, and then you might think, how, you know, it's just too much for me. I can't afford cedar, blah, blah, blah. You could use wood pallets, you know, like we have one of our mentors from Milwaukee. He became like the biggest food security, the leader of food security in America, using recyclable goods, because he said, you know, if we're going to look at growing food, especially in urban centers, focusing on the Black community, we can't afford to go to Lee Valleys and all these different places and buy all the cute stuff. What can we use that's sustainable? He started getting all of these companies to send their wood pallets when they were finished with them, built all of his compost with wood pallets. He's known across the world, Will Allen, as, you know, the Black Gold, you know, guru. All of the inputs he gets for all of his farms are for free from Starbucks, all these different companies that send all of their organic waste as a means to, you know, to get rid of them in a social purpose way. And then he's teaching hundreds of Black youth in Chicago and Wisconsin how to become farmers. You know, like that's a whole other conversation, looking at how we've mentally enslaved ourselves around food aggregation and access to food. You talk to some youth and they'll tell you that a slavery thing and they don't want to deal with that. They don't realize that our people, our ancestors, you know, if you were a farmer, you were top of the community, right? The farmers ran things back in the day because they grew the food. They had the granaries, they had the animals, they understood land design, they were scientists, you know? And so we don't learn that in traditional spaces, and it's very important for us to share that over and over again with the younger generation, so they understand, you know, their place and their responsibility to pay that forward and to be stewards to the environment.
So that was some good information. I like to be on time, as Black people say. They say Black people don't like to be on time. We like to keep this between 7 and 9. We're a little over, but it's some good information. That you can always reach out to each other. Ucha again is in our Principal Evolution group. So if you ever want to reach out and ask questions, feel free. We can always keep the conversation flowing there. Again, I want to thank everybody for spending their time here. We did send out another survey. Please fill that out. Let us know how well we did, information that you guys want to hear in the future, what you're interested in. But please just let us know how we did so we can get better for next week. Again, I want to thank everybody for joining. We can keep the conversation going again on the WhatsApp group. Also, if you don't have the connect to our newsletter or our emails, please just send your email. We'll put you on that, and just keep the conversation going. And thanks for sharing your knowledge.
Yes, thank you, everybody.
Appreciate it. Have a good night. Stay safe.
All right, peace.
Peace.
Oh, I like that hand clap thing. Peace, guys.